Hello, and welcome back to Doomed, a playthrough of Arkham Horror the card game campaigns with focus on storytelling and roleplay. I'm glad you're able to join me again for this second installment, Return to the Midnight Masks. In our first installment, Agnes Baker and her small coven of witches, headed by Olive McBride, were able to play through the Return to the Gathering, and did relatively well from an objective point of view. They managed to defeat several enemies, a giant scary ghoul priest wearing a deer's skull on its head, or something to that effect. And all in all, Agnes came into her own in terms of her powers. She learned that she had access to a lot more strength than she thought she did, and more tools than she thought she had. In terms of the outcomes of that scenario, Agnes chose to heed the warning of the Zealot, Lita Chandler, who told her, "You gotta burn this house down if you want to take care of these creatures that are burrowing beneath your home." And she went, "Well, yeah, okay, I think that actually makes sense." So Agnes Baker burned down her home. Never much of a home anyway. Now, watching everything she owned disappear in the flames obviously takes a bit of a toll. So, mechanically, she's going to start this scenario with one mental trauma. However, by learning more about the mythos, she's earned some experience. She's managed to become even more fearless, and she's also chosen to spend some of her time and resources and energy helping Olive's coven. So now, if she's able, she may be able to even call upon one of the initiates in this group, and perhaps they'll be even better at helping her. Agnes has also chosen to take Lita Chandler along. Now, whether or not she sees Lita, she just hasn't chosen to reject her. She thinks this person obviously knows a lot about what's going on, and Agnes she's not studious, she's not a scholar, she's not an investigator in the law enforcement sense of the term. She's just doing her best to survive and to understand what's happening around her. She is a fighter, though, and she'll do what needs to be done. If you're joining us on Doomed for the first time, I would suggest watching the first episode first, Return to the Gathering, where I spend the first few minutes sort of going over a basic overview of Arkham Horror the card game and what is it that we're attempting to do. If you are already familiar with Arkham Horror the card game, there's a timestamp in the video description where you can skip ahead where we start the game proper. However, for those of you who are relatively new, just a brief recap about Arkham Horror the card game. We are attempting to advance the ACT deck, which are the objectives that the investigators hope to accomplish in order to not meet a grisly end. At the same time, a counter of doom is counting up towards our grisly demises. The agenda deck is also then concurrently advancing. We are attempting to investigate locations, trying to find clues with which to advance the ACT deck, deal with enemies or other obstacles that the encounter deck throws our way, all the while also balancing resource management, health, sanity, playing cards, committing cards to skill tests to get bonuses, all that good stuff. We'll jump into the game, and we'll get ready to see how Agnes takes on Return to the Midnight Masks. Intro 2. In the wake of the disaster at your home, Lita Chandler, the red-haired woman from your parlor, lays out a tale that, even in light of what you just witnessed, strains the limits of your belief. The creatures in your home, she claims, are called ghouls, cruel beings who plague the crypts, caverns, and tunnels beneath the cities of Arkham. City. It's only one city of Arkham. These creatures feed on the corpses of humans, and they are served by a dark cult within Arkham whose members have inexplicably come to worship the ancient master of the ghouls. This cult has been killing innocent people and feeding them to the ghouls, satiating a monstrous hunger. A dark balance was maintained, until now. Recently, Lita continues, one of their lairs where the corpses were stored was destroyed. Since then, the ghouls have been more active than usual. I've tracked their movements and tried my best to stop them running amok throughout the city, but I think there's something worse going on. The cult has been planning something darker and more ominous than anything I have yet observed. Indications are that this plan shall come to fruition tonight, shortly after midnight. Beyond that, I cannot fathom what to expect. Many of the cultists, Lita continues, will seem like everyday people despite their foul intentions. Whenever the cult meets, its members don masks shaped like the skulls of various animals to protect their identities from one another. These masks are our mark, symbols of death and decay. We must unmask the cultists to expose and derail their plans. We have but a few hours. The more cultists we find before midnight, the better. I've already done the setup of this scenario, so we'll just have a quick overview here. This is our wonderful waitress slash sorcerer slash apprentice witch slash awesome investigator Agnes Baker. She's going to start in Rivertown, and she has the whole city of Arkham to play with. There's South Side, St. Mary's Hospital, Miskatonic University, North Side, Downtown, East Town, this is Rivertown again, and the Graveyard. Naturally, Agnes will probably be exploring the Graveyard first. We will read the agenda in the act deck, draw our opening hand, and we'll see what happens to Agnes Baker this time around on Doomed. Agenda 1A, Predator or Prey. Lita seems convinced of a conspiracy within the city of Arkham. Well, I mean, so do I. She was very persuasive. She believes that a secret cult serves the ghouls that live in the crypts beneath the city, and that several of the cult's prominent members are scattered throughout Arkham. As you begin searching for them, you can't shake the feeling that you, too, are being hunted. Six Doom. And there's an action on this scenario card which says Resign. You don't want to risk taking too long, so you head to safety with the information you've gathered. This is a nice escape valve. Agnes realizes, of course, she's investigating. She's in charge of finding out as much as she can, but she can also get out if it's getting too close to midnight, which is when the cult is supposed to meet. Act 1A, Uncovering the Conspiracy. You have one night to find the members of this cult and unveil their plan. The more members of the cult you can find and interrogate before midnight, the better. Action. The investigators spend 2 clues per investigator as a group. Draw the top card of the cultist deck. Find as many unique cultist enemies as you can and add them to the victory display. If there are 6 unique cultist enemies in the victory display, advance. Note, not all of them are in the cultist deck. In other words, Agnes is going to have to find clues around Arkham as to who the various members of this cult are, track them down, and find a way to neutralize them. Now that might be, good old-fashioned beat 'em up, or there might be other ways that she can persuade them to renounce the cult or get away. We're not sure exactly. All right, Agnes. Let's see what we got. Oh, I should probably check the scenario card. -X, the highest number of Doom on a cultist enemy in play. Place a Doom on the nearest cultist enemy, or if you fail, place a clue on your location. Ugh, -3. Ugh. Okay. Drawing cards. What a great opening hand. Agnes, you're lucky, and I love it. I'm just going to take a quick mull here. I think I might need some of this. That's a good start, but I don't want that up front. Ward is really good too, but I really want to see if I can find Olive. 1, 2, 3. Well, well, we have Lita anyway. So Agnes starts right here at Rivertown. It's a central location in Arkham. The banks of the Miskatonic River are lined with docks, warehouses, and small shops in a district aptly named Rivertown. It's connected to most of the other locations. There's a clue here. It's the lone warehouse next to the river is quiet and secluded, an ideal venue for unsavory dealings. Discard a card with X willpower icons, remove X doom from a cultist enemy in play. You can get rid of some of your own options in order to, I guess, pay someone to go and deal with a cultist for you. It's kind of fun. It's a 4 shroud, 1 clear location. Whoa, okay. Well, I will say it's a relatively straightforward thing. Agnes knows what she needs to do. She needs to find clues, and she needs to find ways of dealing with the cultists should they come after her. Now, she doesn't have a way of dealing with them as of yet, but instead of calling, she's sent Olive and the Witch's Coven off to the different corners of Arkham, hoping that they will perhaps be able to uncover something and bring it back to her. I mean, what's the point of having a network of people if you don't use them all? So Olive is not at her side at the moment, but Lita has plans to go along with her. Lita Chandler, which is great. Agnes no longer needs Olive McBride to help her focus her energy. She is able to uncage her own soul. The power seized her, made her shudder and spasm. Its energy united with hers, and then she opened her eyes. It's going to allow her to activate her sixth sense without sapping too much of her own energy. And of course, we wouldn't be Agnes Baker if we didn't also have our ritual candles out. So we're not quite set up, but we're getting there. In the upkeep phase, I draw a card. Okay. And now it is our first Mythos phase. Again, Agnes doesn't really know what to expect from the town. She knows that there were ghouls underneath her home, but of course her home is gone. So as far as she's concerned, that warren of creatures has been destroyed. The ghoul priest is gone, certainly. She knows there are people around the town who could be anybody. who could be members of this cult. I'm going to place a doom on the agenda, and we're going to draw our first encounter card. What is it got for her today? Wow, okay, that's bad. A terrible start. They had no faces at all to smile with, but only a suggestive blankness where their face ought to be. Swooping down from above and screeching in a horrible voice, this thing, vaguely humanoid, the hunting night gaunt. It will chase her. You can see here it's got 3 combat, 4 health, and 1 evade. It also says when attempting to evade hunting night gaunt, double the negative modifier on each revealed chaos token. This is a horrible start. That is what it is. The storytelling here, this actually makes a lot of sense, I think, in a lot of ways. This hunting night gaunt swoops down from above, screeching, and Agnes thinks to herself, what have I gotten myself into? She now knows more or less how to control some of the powers that she discovered in her own home. So the very first thing she's going to do, it's fast. I'm going to actually take a very quick pause just to see if there's a window here. I think there is, but I'm just going to check. I'm back. There's a player window for Agnes to have her premonition before the Mythos phase ends, before the investigator phase begins, so I'm going to use it. What do your eyes see? The next action she takes will be undertaken at a -1. This means she can't fight. This means she could evade. She also has access to her... She thinks she can possibly pull it off, make herself ethereal, but that might be a better panic button to keep for later. So the very first thing Agnes is going to do is, of course, attempt to get away from this night gaunt. she's going to attempt to duck and weave and just get the hell out of Rivertown, hoping to lose it down by the docks. She has 3 evasion. She pulls a -1 on the evade attempt, which is doubled due to the Night Gaunt, but that's still enough to evade the enemy. Now, of course, naturally, I'd love to get the clue off this location as well, but it doesn't feel great. We should just try to get away from here. Agnes is going to rush. Ooh, where is she going to go is the question. Lita is helping to guide her here as well. And Agnes, it's become very clear to Agnes that she needs some sort of way of dealing with this horrible creature, and, you know, God forbid if there are more of them. So she's going to rush off to Miskatonic University, one of the most prestigious colleges in the Northeast. The university library is famous for its collection of occult books, maintained by the esteemed Dr. Henry Armitage. Let's have a look at it. 3 shroud and 1 clue. I can take 2 horror to gain a clue, once per game. The university's museum holds many peculiar exhibits and ominous relics from expeditions all over the world. In other words, by going through these museum's collections, the university's museum, sorry, by heading through the university, she'll have to see many horrifying things, but she'll gain some insight into who the potential cultists are here in town. I think the last action we're going to have is going to be to try to get the clue off of this location so that we can continue to move on. I have 5 willpower. I'm going to investigate it using 6th Sense, of course. That's a big -4. Agnes, the fear from running away from the Night Gaunt has, of course, wiped some of her energy, some of her ability to use this sense that she's developed. She knows she has it, but it's not working very well at the moment. So nothing happens. In the enemy phase, nothing happens. During upkeep, our good friend the Night Gaunt is ready. It's going to start hunting again next turn, which is really scary. And of course we draw a card. Hey, Olive! Olive's ready to be used. If Olive is here and ready to... We can't have Olive and Lita by our side at all times, so... If we want to use Olive, we have to sort of kick Lita out or away, or we have to send her off on some sort of wild goose chase, helping us defeat the Night Gaunt. Okay, and over to the Mythos phase. We haven't done very much yet, so this is not great. 2. Masked Horrors. A scheme. Even here at the university, Agnes is surprised to hear some strange chanting. She's not quite sure where it's coming from exactly until she looks up and sees on the rooftop of one of the university's buildings on the quad 3 robed figures wearing these animal masks. Animal skulls, really, on their heads. Umordoth, Umordoth, Umordoth. She's not sure what that means, but it might be some sort of ritualistic spell. Each investigator with 2 or more clues takes 2 horror. Nope. If no horror is dealt by this effect, place a doom on the agenda. She doesn't know what to make of the chanting, but of course, she's no fool. Agnes knows this means something is drawing closer to her. She's really going to have to hurry at this point. Of course, we definitely want to continue to run away from... So Agnes knows she's going to want to run away from the Night Gaunt until she has some sort of ability to deal with it. Which means perhaps she's going to want to try to get more things. She could also attempt to Okay. We could try to get the clue here and then move on. And potentially even using our sixth sense, pick up some clues from Rivertown at the same time, which would be nice. Let's try it. Agnes's first action, of course, she's going to really attempt to block out even, the chanting that she's hearing from those strange robed figures. They don't seem to be a threat. They just seem to be very creepy. She's going to attempt to investigate. 5 on 3. +1. That's great. That's the clue off this location. She and Lita managed to find some information here at the university. Correspondence between one of the professors and some other people here in town. Nothing is proven yet, but they have names and they have things to go on. Question is, do we attempt to sixth sense here? Without Olive, I think it's kind of useless, so we're just going to move away. Agnes is going to look and see what is at Northside. A commercial district that contains many offices and factories, as well as the train station. Perfect, so she can get out if the getting is good. Oh, the train has many stops throughout Arkham and many more beyond that. You're tempted to leave all of this behind. Move to any Arkham location. Limit once per game. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Are they all Arkham locations? Yeah, okay, just checking. It's also a 2 Shroud location. So here in this commercial district, again, Agnes is going to see about potentially trying to find more information, hunt down the leads that she had started at the university. But she also knows that the train is very useful. She can actually use it to zip all the way away from this screeching, horrible night gaunt thing that's coming after her. But the last action we're going to take in the investigation phase is investigating once more. Sixth sense. +1. Feeling lucky, are we, Agnes? Very good. Okay. In the enemy phase, hunter enemies hunt. We didn't see any of these in the home. There weren't that many ghouls that were trying to chase Agnes down, but this night gaunt, it knew where she was, and it still does. It's going to chase her one spot to the university. Yikes. It's now upkeep. Draw a card, take a resource. The Heirloom of Hyperborea. I just want to point this out for a brief moment here. The etchings on its surface change from day to day, shifting and moving whenever I'm not looking. It's Agnes's signature asset. She's the only person who can take it because it's hers. This is the thing, the accessory, the key, the locket, the heirloom that she found in the attic of her relative's home that started this whole adventure. By touching it, it's the touchstone that brought back some of the memories of her previous life and sort of started her down this whole path. Naturally, she's never going to leave home without it. But it also, I just want to point out, 3 resources to play. It comes with a price, the Heirloom of Hyperborea. She's not quite sure what that price is, but the weight of it around her neck, it's not a light thing. Let me put it that way. But I think that's going to be worth putting down. Usually it's not, but mechanically speaking, usually it's not the best to put down. But in this situation, it might be. So, let's upkeep. We move back to the Mythos phase. Now, of course, because of that chanting, we're even closer to the tomb. And we're going to draw an encounter card. What's facing Agnes down here at Northside this time? The Disciple of the Devourer. Placate the beast, and we are allowed to live. When we die, it will feast on our enemies. Agnes isn't 100% sure what that means, but it doesn't sound good. A cultist, a humanoid cultist. Now, these aren't the leaders of the cult, of course. Spawns at the farthest empty location. 1, 2, 1, 2, 2. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So either at Southside or the graveyard. I think it would be at the graveyard, don't you? After you spawn it, place a doom on it or place a clue on its location. If the current agenda is not Agenda 1, it is. If it is not Agenda 1, right, okay. Doom, if I may briefly veer off this roleplay for a moment, Doom represents time in the game. The closer the Mythos are to achieving whatever objectives they're trying to achieve, Doom is how they do it. And one Doom essentially represents however many actions you as a team have between you. In solo, it's only 3 actions, but those actions are so much more valuable because it's just you. Anyway, there's a clue on its location, so we're going to have to go get it. That's for sure. That was the Mythos phase. So we're back to the investigator phase. Haven't seen any special tokens yet, so these ritual candles have just been lit and burning down for nothing. Agnes has used her sixth sense to sort of uncover some information. Some of it has now been lost. Well, not lost, but it's just out of her grasp. She doesn't quite know where these cultists are, how she's going to reach them. But she had a flash of something in her most recent vision, and she thought she wasn't sure what that meant, but the pieces are falling into place. Someone is at the graveyard. The graveyard lies at the foot of French Hill. Some of the headstones date back to the 17th century, when the earliest colonists came to Arkham. Considering what happened to your house, you're not completely keen on heading there. She's not keen, but she's gonna do it. Move to any Arkham location, limit once per game. First action, zip. Agnes zips over to the graveyard. Now, a couple of things happen when she arrives. First things first, whoa! Look at all the clues on the graveyard. After you enter the graveyard, test willpower 3. If you fail, take 2 horror or move to Rivertown. This is actually potentially really good. We're going to test willpower 3, and we're not going to commit anything because we're okay failing this. Again, moving into the graveyard, there are things there that you'd rather not see. And you either have to, okay, or you could draw the +1 again. Agnes is just too good at willpower tests. I'm just checking to make sure that, yeah, it's just the one. Shuffled. So nothing happens. Except now, of course, also the Devourer of the Disciple is there waiting for her and engages her. Now, if she had a way of taking horror on herself, she could, you redirect it and blast it into this guy and try to defeat him. Instead, is she gonna try to go toe-to-toe and punch him? It seems a little crazy to burn the heirloom on punching a single disciple. If we evade him, we'll be able to try to get a clue off this location, but then we haven't dealt with him. So Agnes is, of course, missing her. She hasn't yet summoned the power that she needs to. Spells are tricky things. I don't purport to know much about witches' covens, but I can tell from what Agnes has been through that these various powers that she has just kind of come to her in flashes. It's not a litany of powers that she can just say, oh, well, I have this or I have that. She has to draw from deep within herself, and sometimes that isn't even enough. However, because she has Lita, she can actually go toe-to-toe with the Disciple. Now, it's not great, but she can definitely try. So, for her second action, this Disciple of the Devourer stumbles out of the woods, pops out from behind a gravestone, actually. And Agnes, standing there, no weapons, no ability to defend herself, is going to simply attempt to fight back. 3-3. I have 2 combat, but +1 from Lita versus the 3 of the Disciple. Wow, that's bad. Okay. So, the fighting, nothing happens to her. I think, though, we have such a big buffer with Lita. I think we're actually okay to just keep trying to punch. Again, we're locked in a tussle. Agnes could try to leave him behind, but she's not leaving the graveyard anytime soon, so she figures it's better to just try to subdue this guy entirely. Last action, I'm going to try to fight him again. A tablet. +1 from the candles, but that's still a -2. And place one of your clues on your location. Well, thankfully the graveyard only has 1 shroud, so we're going to be able to pick these up pretty quickly, but it's less good. So, Agnes, the waitress / sorcerer, even with Lita helping her, this guy continues to dance rings around her, and as the hunting Nightgaunt screeches ever closer, he manages to land a blow on Lita. not on Agnes, don't worry. Ay. Okay. Upkeep. A ward of protection. That's okay. That's really okay, actually. Again, these spells come in flashes. They're not necessarily just sort of obvious. They're not, it's not a recipe book. They come in flashes to her, you know? Place another doom on the agenda. We're at 5 out of 6. Something is drawing closer, as the cultists predicted. And an obscuring fog. Well, that's less good. This is the same thick, soupy fog that invaded her study. As Agnes was trying to leave her study at her now burned down home, a thick fog had kind of almost grown over everything, and the same happens here. Now, naturally, this is a graveyard, so it's a bit more to be expected, but she feels like she recognizes the fog. It's going to increase the shroud. It's going to make it harder for her to see things. But that is the least of her worries at the moment. Oh. This is very exciting. Agnes, seeing the fog coming, she knows it's probably not that much of an issue, but she also knows that she needs to assert her power. Somehow she needs to use her abilities rather than simply just react to what's being thrown at her. She is a survivor, but more importantly, she's a mystic, she's a sorcerer. She wants to understand what's happening out there. So in fact, dropping to her knees, dropping onto the floor, apparently, as the fog rolls towards her, she holds up the ritual candles and almost whispers a couple of words of power. And a blast of light radiates out from her. Cancel the card's revelation effect. The fog retreats and disappears, almost as if it was never there. Now, of course, unfortunately, the power of that ward of protection that she managed to cast is going to blast Agnes with some energy, but she can subconsciously reroute it, as we know, and she's going to take that horror and deal damage to this disciple, destroying him. Now, destroying is probably a bit of a harsh word. She didn't wither away his limbs and, crush his head or something with some sort of baseball bat. The energy that she spent, the energy that invaded her, that allowed her to cast this ward, dissipating the fog, invaded her mind, which she's able to simply just redirect and the force of that knocked out the disciple. He's out cold. Not bad, Agnes. Now, unfortunately, we also have this horrible screeching monster coming down on us. But very simply, we have to get the clues off this graveyard. So I think this is a very simple turn. I think this turn we are going to attempt to get clues off this location. The first action might be to draw a card. She might want more options in order to try to get the clues faster, or be a bit more... No, she has an ability. She has the ability to get away. She knows she can get away from the Night Gaunt, so I'm going to try to get the clues off this location. It's a 1-shroud location, and her 6th sense allows her to investigate at a 5. And we can even potentially get the clue off the next location over. Even better. Wow. Okay. First tentacle of the campaign. I didn't draw any last game. Wild. Not only is Agnes unable to see anything through the mists of her mind, but it actually short circuits her mind almost entirely. She kind of slumps down onto the ground. But she's a fighter. She's going to try again. It's almost like she should attempt to find a different way of doing this, but without a flashlight, without any other way of sort of investigating, she has to rely upon her own prowess. And I have a feeling this will work out a bit better for her. Yeah, okay, there you go. That works out much better. Comedy. While her first attempt at getting information from this graveyard is met only with the howls of the damned, the voices from beyond the grave, her second attempt is crystal clear. The fickle nature of using spells, I suppose. She's able to take a clue. Oops, forgot to change that. And she is empowered to go again. Wow, look at that. Bam. Another clue off the location. Great. Obviously, we're going to try to get all of the clues off this location. And I think, well, we're going to do our best. It's now the enemy phase, which means she thought she had escaped it entirely, but that horrible shrieking sound comes back to her as the hunting Night Gaunt enters the space, enters the graveyard, and swoops down at her. It pings her. Lita takes the brunt of the attack, but the screeching enters Agnes's mind, which again she's able to redirect into a damage onto the Night Gaunt, which is okay. Yeah, once per phase. Okay. And then it is upkeep. So she's now got the Night Gaunt to deal with as she draws her Fearless. That's great. That's really good. Oh, but now, of course, it's the Mythos. The scary, scary Mythos. We go to 6 Doom, which means we have to advance the agenda. Predator or prey? What the heck? What is this? The masked hunter is silently stalking. We knew that there was something after us. You could just tell. Spawn engage with the prey. The prey has most clues. That's me. It's a hunter. Gets +2 health per investigator, so it's a 4/6/2. While you are engaged with the masked hunter, you cannot discover or spend clues. This, I just want to admire the art on the card. It's very evocative. This is what appears to be a youngish person. Jeans, even? Leather overcoat, and wearing what appears to be some sort of, I don't even know what that is, some sort of boar skull on its head, and carrying what I can only describe as a kukri. Agnes thought that the monster swooping down from above her was going to be the biggest issue. It turns out that was the least of her worries. a nearby mausoleum door creaks open, and she can see that the feeling she's had of something stalking her has been true this whole time. A masked man steps out. Now it's seen her, and it's moving towards her. Of course, we also have to draw an encounter card. So that's fun. Oh, what's the next agenda say? Time is running short. The minutes pass quickly as your investigation continues. Resign. You don't want to risk taking too long, so you head to safety. Our objective, just as a reminder, or Agnes's objective, I should say, is to find as many unique cultist enemies as you can and add them to the victory display. Now, this masked hunter is a unique cultist enemy, and he's worth 2 experience, no less. He's also a pretty hard, scary hitter, and frankly, Agnes is not going to be able to fight him. Not until she's received some other... until she's got some other way of fighting. Draw our encounter card, and then we'll see where we're at. Crypt Chill. Test willpower 4. The supernatural cold threatens to freeze your soul. Naturally, of course, as the mausoleum door opens, the masked hunter is accompanied by a feeling of intense cold. There was that chill rising from the ground in the Return to the Gathering in her home, but this is different. This feels like death. If you fail, choose and discard an asset you control. Okay, well, we have an asset to discard, but I think we're going to attempt to pass this. I have 6 willpower. Holding on to the heirloom. Holding on to the heirloom just a little longer. No, that's fine. We're going to attempt to, or Agnes is going to attempt to stand tall and strong against the unnatural wave of ice moving towards her. Should have committed the heirloom. So we failed, so we have to choose and discard an asset we control. Well, it's going to be the candles. Oh, or is it going to be Lita Chantler? Doesn't seem like a good idea, but then we can get Olive. This is a horrible moment. The chill blasting out from the mausoleum surrounds Lita. And before Agnes's very eyes, before she can even stop it, it's rooted her to the ground, and the ice travels up her body and freezes her in this horrible rictus. This horrible frozen pose of fear, terror, horror. Now Agnes is alone. Alone against some sort of beast with wings, and... does it have wings? I think it does. And a person, but a cultist, someone very dangerous, who wants nothing more than to end her investigation. Well, that definitely could have gone better. I mean, I think it's pretty clear. The very first thing we have to do is get away from these guys. They're too dangerous. Agnes does have an ace, so to speak. Evade. Ethereal form. She's going to attempt to get away from... actually. Right. She's going to attempt to get away from the masked hunter, who has 2 evasion. However, she gets to add her willpower to her evasion, so she's attempting to make herself a spirit. She's obviously been inspired by the graveyard around her. It costs 2. And she's going to attempt to evade. She's an 8 on 2. That feels pretty good. You know, sometimes the mythos just borks you. Horrible. Just horrible. Oh, that's so bad. Okay. So, thematically, story-wise, this is an excellent moment. Almost as excellent as using the ward to blast away the fog so that she could destroy that cultist, but now we see what the mythos is really ready to throw at her. A horrible beast and a masked hunter, and her attempt to become ethereal fizzles out. If Olive had been here, we would have been able to avoid that. speaking of Olive, I think we still need to get away from these guys because we can't fight them. However, if we try to get away from each of them separately, then she'll have nowhere to go, and therefore they'll just find her again in the graveyard. So we need to try to take a more permanent solution, so to speak. Can we attempt to get away from the hunter, and then we put down Olive so that we have a few more options? Olive might be here to the rescue. Yeah. So we're going to try to get away from the masked hunter. We're a 3v2. Hey, okay, that's good. So after the feeling of powerlessness that she felt from her attempt to become ethereal, just simply vanishing, she's able to, just using her wits and her legs, she's able to just get away from the hunter entirely, which is a good feeling. Now, of course, she's still got this night gaunt with her, but she's going to, against her better judgment, she's going to call out for Olive. Olive, come and help me. Now, this lets the night gaunt see her, so she's going to take damage and horror from the night gaunt, but that does allow her to redirect some of that mental strain into damage. And we now have Olive, which will hopefully help us. Hopefully. In the enemy phase, it's going to do a damage. And, do we want to do this again? Yeah, it's once per phase, right? Again, the night gaunt is going to swoop down, and I should mention, of course, the reason that we took an attack there and it wasn't in the enemy phase, for newer players. I have an enemy with me, and I took an action that isn't fight, evade, deal with the enemy, parlay, deal with the enemy, or resign, get out of there. The action I took was to call out to Olive. You must invest yourself in every spell, sometimes literally. You say it, girl. However, by taking the horror from the night gaunt, we're able to sort of redirect that. Again, now that we're into the enemy phase, I think I was at 4, so I think I was at 1 and 4. So I'm going to go to 2 and 5. I think that's right. Which puts another damage on the night gaunt, which is good. We're going to be able to hopefully deal with it as soon as possible. Hopefully. In the upkeep phase, everything ready, so the masked hunter is here, and it does find us again, but it doesn't attack us this round because it's just found us. Draw a card. It's lucky. That's useful. Feeling lucky, actually. And no way of fighting. It feels very apropos, doesn't it? This has been really tough, I have to say. Agnes has continually found hints as to who these cultists might be, but hasn't actually found any of them yet, which is terrible. I mean, she's found one because he found her. Just, oof, okay. Place of Doom. Oh no! Agnes thought it was getting better, but it's just getting worse. Another screech joins the cacophony in the sky as another night gaunt swoops down upon her. Now, let's not forget, of course, that we do have a panic button. We can leave. Yeah, we can always leave. We'll have gained no experience. We'll have, well, I mean, in our hearts we will have gained experience. We'll have found no cultists. We'll have done nothing, essentially. But, I mean, ideally we could even just try to finish off the masked hunter, I guess. 2 beasts circle the air above the graveyard. Agnes is regretting going to the graveyard now, as a unnaturally silent humanoid figure stalks between the graves, trying to find her. She's trapped. We can get out, but we should attempt to do something, I think. You don't want to just assume that you're going to lose. The first thing, this Night Gaunt is almost dead, so we're going to try to get it. We're going to try to get it. Agnes isn't a fighter, but she's able to draw upon the strength of her heirloom. She's able to draw upon the strength from this heavy weight around her neck. She casts it off, knowing that it won't help her because she needs to run. Again, this is the survivor part of her coming out. She's unable to draw the energy from it, but if she can just get rid of it, maybe that will give her the boost she needs. She's going to pick up a pretty hefty rock she's found behind the grave that she's hiding behind, and she's going to lob it at the Night Gaunt, hoping to get it right between the eyes. We're now fighting at a 4v3. +1. Fantastic. By casting off that heirloom, it's given her the little bit of energy that she needs, but whether that's a placebo or not remains to be seen. That's 1. Wow. We obviously need to try to get away, and we need to try to find a way to deal with these monsters. Our ethereal form is gone. That's so disappointing. That was such a disappointing. Hindsight is 2020, and Agnes now knows, if she had had Olive on her side, she might have been able to avoid that outcome. And that's the power of Olive McBride and the Coven of Witches, of which she is a part. Okay. All we have is our own luck. So we're going to try to get away from the hunter, and we're going to try to get out of here. Yeah, that's what we're going to try to do. Second action, we're going to try to evade, and we're going to use Olive. Yes. So we have 3 agility. Good thing we used Olive, hey? So we're going to, Olive says reveal 3 and choose 2. So we're ignoring the -4. That still makes us a -3. That's 0 against 2. However, we're feeling pretty lucky, which is play when you would fail and get +2. So we match it again. After launching the rock and killing the Night Gaunt, the one of those injured beasts, the hunter's head snaps around unnaturally and starts to charge Agnes. She knows the end is nigh, but she gets up and starts to flee the graveyard anyway. And as she looks back, the hunter is gaining on her until it trips on a root. She thinks to herself, thank my lucky stars. And she rushes right out of the graveyard. And the last thing she's going to do is actually, indeed, get out of the graveyard. Moving to Rivertown brings the Night Gaunt is still with her, and unfortunately that means she has to take an attack from it. Take a damage, put a horror on Olive. Okay. In the enemy phase, happens again. Take a damage, put a horror on. Oh, this is so bad. In the upkeep phase, Olive is ready, and we are really just hoping we have some sort of way of dealing with these beasts as they stalk towards us. Haven't found any other cultists yet. Just horrible. Draw a card? Great. Cool. Uncage what? We can uncage our own soul, but to what end? I mean, this is the thing. This is the thing about Doomed. The whole purpose of the series is to tell an engaging story, because that, for me, is the core of this Arkham Horror living card game. It's storytelling, and, unfortunately, not all stories have happy endings. We've lost Lita to this freezing crypt chill, which, of course, now I horribly regret doing. We've lost our ability to make ourselves ethereal. We've never found the ability to fight. This whole situation has just been truly horrible. We still have time. Time is running short, but we can always leave. We can leave before we take any more damage. But let's draw our encounter card and see where we are. On Wings of Darkness. Test agility 4 if you fail. A night gaunt swoops down from the sky, sure, and grabs you with its clawed hands, carrying you off into the night. Where are you taking me? There's nothing I can do other than use Olive, but I don't want to. Well, I'm just going to test. I'm a 3 to 4. -1, yeah, so fail. Take a damage in a horror. This is looking real bad. Putting a damage on the Night Gaunt. Disengage from each non-Night Gaunt enemy, my bad. Move to a central location. Here's the thing, I'm already at a central location. So, in fact, it just swoops down, picks her up, and she's able to thrash out of its grasp, falling to the pavement below. But it knows that it's lost its prey, and it's not going anywhere. Agnes is very hurt. Olive is there with her. She's not looking great either. She's looking very weak. Agnes has 1 health and 2 sanity left. We're going to have to just try to get away. Let's try to get away from the Night Gaunt, right? And then maybe find a way of, find a way of getting one cultist anyway. We're not going to use Olive here for a couple of reasons, but specifically, Olive looks pale and ashen. She seems to have exhausted a lot of her power. Agnes is just going to try to run away down an alley that might be a bit too narrow for the Night Gaunt. Let's see. It is not too narrow for the Night Gaunt. It caught up with her almost immediately. She's going to try again. Oh, that's so bad. I barely drew any. These ritual candles have been totally useless. I mean, I should point out, of course, the idea that Agnes would think that the ritual candles would help her out in the city. A candle helps when you're in a small room, a small space. It gives off a nice warm glow, or as they're described here, an eerie glow. But, if you're using them when you're out in the city, they're not going to do anything for you. That small light can't stand against the darkness. And yet, we always have to hope. Do we want to try punching it instead? Let's do it. Let's do it. We're going to try punching. We are a 2 against 3. We're going to use Olive here. A skull and an auto. Okay, so we have to take the skull and we have to take the -1. This doesn't actually make a difference, does it? -X. There's no doom, so that's a 0, but it's +1 for the ritual candles, which is canceled by the -1. So we're still at 2 versus 3, so nothing happens. But Olive, you did your job. Thank you so much. I don't want to do this on Doomed. I don't want to retcon things necessarily. I don't want to say, oh, whoops, that was a bad play. I should have put down Olive so that I would have more chances to hit my ethereal form or whatever. In terms of the gameplay, the reason it's called Doomed, as I mentioned in the first episode, is because I am not an expert at Arkham Horror. I love the game for its storytelling. However, I think there are some points where it's probably important to retcon. I failed to hit the Night Gaunt, but we're going to, in fact, undo the action entirely, because instead, we're just going to resign. The Masked Hunter is about to stalk into Rivertown, corner us in the warehouse, and cut our face off or whatever it's going to do. So instead, we're going to resign. You don't want to risk taking too long, so you head to safety with the information you've gathered. Joke's on you. Agnes didn't gather any information. Whew, that was terrible. Yeah, so resolution 1. You've managed to obtain some useful information about the cult and its plans. You can only hope it's enough. In your campaign log under Cultists We Interrogated, record the names of each unique cultist enemy in the victory display. There are none. As a quick aside, typically when you play this scenario, you aim to get a couple. If you're playing with more than one investigator, if you're not playing solo, it's a bit easier. You can have people go to different places in the city, and you can sort of say, okay, well, this one I'm going to have to fight, so I'll send the fighter, and this one I'm going to have to pay money, or whatever. In your campaign log under Cultists Who Got Away, record the name of each unique enemy still remaining in the cultist deck or in play. If it is Agenda 1, record the Masked Hunter here as well. Ghoul Priest, and Victory X in the victory display, so 0. So, unfortunately, and, again, this is just kind of, it's how the game rolls sometimes. And I'm still quite pleased because I think the story of this was pretty exciting. Agnes had her sixth sense. She had Lita, and she was able to, get some clues. She was able to do what she needed to do. She was able to get away from that horrible screeching monstrosity. But as time went on, she was unable to find the tools she needed to fight. And by taking the train to the graveyard, she sealed her fate, because she was able to defeat the sort of small fry cultist that was there, but she was unable to get out of the graveyard without having to sacrifice Lita and without having to fizzle out, But she managed to get away, so no trauma in that sense. And I think it's going to be really useful for us to... I have to record the names of the different cultists, so I have to record them, but Agnes wouldn't know them. So we're going to do that when we're not recording. I think that makes more sense. But we have 6 unique cultists, and they got away. We know they're headed to the woods to complete some sort of ritual. We don't know what that is, and Lita didn't really give us enough information. But I think it's pretty safe to say we're going to find them there. And that about does it for this session of Doomed. I certainly feel doomed. Don't you? It could have been worse, and it could have been much, much better. But as always, thank you so much for joining me here. It's been a great storytelling experience, and unfortunately, while we didn't get a chance to progress the act, while we didn't get a chance to progress the actual objective at all, I still think that we managed to tell a really compelling, engaging story altogether. So that's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining me here on Doomed, and I hope to see you next time.